Hi there, I'm Tom Spencer. This week on Central Texas Gardener, gear up for cool weather crops with Resolution Gardens. On tour, see how a Brenham couple is filling their kitchen with a small potager. Daphne explains why the trees are raining, and John Dromgoole shows how to start seeds. So let's get growing right here, right now.
Support for Central Texas Gardener comes from GeoGrowers, offering custom soil blends for lawns, gardens, xeriscaping, and organic landscaping supplies. More information at geogrowers.net.
You don't need a lot of land to grow homegrown vegetables. See how these Brenham gardeners are doing it in a small potager.
When Jay and Sally White bought 2 acres in Brenham as a weekend getaway from their Houston jobs, they wanted a place to garden.
We bought the property in October, so the first thing that we did, we bought a tiller and we tilled it up and we had a row garden. No fences or anything.
Now it's home full-time. Sally teaches second graders in Brenham. Jay works online from home and commutes a few days a week. Jay also writes for Texas Gardener magazine, putting his hands-on experience into print.
And this used to be a coastal field. Everybody's familiar with Bermuda, but coastal Bermuda is just special. I mean, it's much more aggressive than your normal Bermuda for your lawn. And after that first fall garden, I saw how aggressive it was in the fall. I couldn't imagine what it was going to be like in the spring. In the spring, it was just unbelievable. And the other thing is that I live on a blackland prairie. So I had 2 huge problems. I had coastal Bermuda grass, and then I had sticky black clay. So once you build your rows and you water, it really wasn't much fun to go into the garden, because when you came out, your feet were going to weigh 10 or 12 pounds covered in the clay.
That spring, they built a fence and planned a potager with raised beds filled to the brim even in winter.
The potager was designed for food production, but it's also designed to be pretty. And so I have flowers in the potager. I mean, we have salvias, we have foxgloves, we have hollyhocks. We have almost as many flowers in there as we do vegetables. We sat down one night, laid out the dimensions, and decided what we wanted it to look like. And so then, as a gift, I mean, my wife and I, you know, we have everything we need, so we always ask our kids to give us free labor. We have 5 kids, and so I joke and say I have a small army of son-in-laws. Well, I do. I've got 4 daughters, so I have a small army of son-in-laws and future son-in-laws. And so one Easter, I asked them, I said, look, all I want you guys to do is come and help me lay these bricks. So before they got here, Sally and I had laid out the beds. They came and we dug out in between the beds, we dug out 1 foot. Weeds are a problem for an organic grower. So after we excavated, one thing that I always do is I put down newspaper. And so we put down about 8 rows of newspaper in the bottom of those ditches. And then I brought in 6 to 7 inches of decomposed granite. And so we put the granite down over the newspaper in the walk paths, leveled that out, watered it in, let it settle. Then we went back and we laid the brick on top of that, and then, you know, we left a 1/4 inch gap, and then we backfilled the brick with more decomposed granite. I was really trying to make my garden a more pleasant place for me to go and work, but I also wanted it to be, you know, aesthetically pleasing. I like order, so I like balance and flow, and so I wanted, you know, even-sized beds here and there. I wanted something that was a pleasure to work in, but a pleasure to look at. You'll see that there's just very little bit of my garden that's mulched, and there's very little of it that's exposed, and it's because the soil that we've built over the last 5 years, I mean, twice a year we're amending it with compost, and so we've got a really nice, loose, arable soil that I can grow things very closely together, and I can get very good production, but it also chokes out the weeds. About the only thing that I'm continually putting in them now is every year I will buy a whole dump truck load of mushroom compost. Compost is actually a soil amendment, and there are some compounds in it that are readily available for plants when you put it in, but by and far it's the organic matter that you put in the soil that are going to feed the microbes. And so as the microbes, you know, eat the compost, then they excrete urea or can keep that in their body, and then larger predators eat them, and as they decompose, then the urea or the nitrogen is released to your plants. So what you're trying to do once you build this is you're trying to get an active living soil. And so when you put compost in there every year, you're not putting nitrogen directly in there, you're trying to feed the organisms that are going to turn into the nitrogen that feeds your plants. So what I do is every year before I plant, I go in and I top dress with about 6 to 8 inches of this compost. When you put compost on that thick, the compost does two things. It slowly begins to leach into the soil, but also it acts as a layer of mulch on the top because it's fairly finely ground. And so as it gets wet, it actually kind of binds and makes a mulch.
Renewing the soil every season means hefty crops all year long.
Broccoli is my favorite thing to grow in the fall garden because unlike all the other cole crops that do so well, you know, you grow a cauliflower, big beautiful head, everybody loves them, you know, but you cut it down and you're done. You know, as soon as you cut that cauliflower head, you need to pull your foliage up and throw it on the compost pile because it's not going to produce anything else for you. But broccoli is not like that. Once you cut that big, beautiful broccoli head, then little broccoli florets will pop up around the side of the cut. And so that broccoli plant will continue to produce. Now, you'll never get another big broccoli head like you had in the beginning, but you'll get little florets that are as big as a quarter, and if you get 100 of those, they make a nice little dinner.
To maximize his space, Jay built trellises to support climbers and other crops. In January, he plants English peas. In late spring, he adds tomatoes and other summer favorites.
Cucumbers, onions, you know, the main things that people grow. Like I say, I have that heirloom squash that I like called tutume. We also grow what we call the UFO squash or the white patty pan squash. We grow yellow squash, we've grown zucchini. In the spring, early spring, we'll put in a lot of green beans. We love the little contender bush beans, and one thing that I like about them is they make a nice border around the potager.
For even more organic food, he and Sally still harvest from a row garden too.
But I really do think that my gardening, it connects me to my past. And one thing that I have in my garden that I'm a really big proponent of is, you know, some people call them heirloom plants, some people call them pass-along plants, whatever you want to call them. I have a lot of plants in my garden that people that I cared about gave to me. I have a beautiful pink rose in my potager, and that rose was given to me by my little sister, who died 2 years ago to Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS. So when I go into the garden, in addition to the growing and all of the things that we as gardeners like, I'm also connected to my friends and my family in my garden.
Thanks so much for sharing your garden with us. It's always great to see such a bountiful space. So again, a real pleasure. Right now we're going to be talking about the fall vegetable garden, and I'm joined by Randy Jewart. Randy is with resolutiongardens.org, and it's great to have you with us. So thanks for being here.
Thanks. I was excited to get the chance to talk about fall gardening. Yeah,
well, I'm excited to have you back here. I first met you, Randy, through the Green Art project you were doing in Austin for years, and you actually brought a piece today that's going to help us make this kind of transition. It's a scarecrow, but a really kind of, I would say, an Austin-looking kind of scarecrow.
That's how we've always done our art projects, is very Austin style.
Right.
Reused materials and lots of, you know, funky designs, and getting artists to think about environmental things, not just their studio practice. So artists are trying some things that maybe they're not as familiar with. So it's always fun.
So we're going to have a scarecrow contest for one of your endeavors here, right?
Yeah, it's fun getting to talk to you because I'm trying to bring the art part back into our world because I've gone so gung-ho into food that we're trying to get back into it, and we have a cultural project called Scarecrow.
Okay.
And we're hoping to create something that just inspires the community. We don't want to own the idea of it. We just figure everybody really needs to know that fall gardening is the beginning of the planting year. And we need some sort of kickoff and, you know, some celebratory aspects.
Scarecrow should work. Well, we are in a time of transition in our area gardens. The summer harvest, which we have a beautiful illustration of. You've brought a lot of the things we're enjoying at the end of the summer right now. But it is already deep into the fall garden time for a lot of folks. A lot of people have already done their soil prep and they're ready to go.
Yes.
But for somebody who may be a little behind the 8 ball and are just now turning their attention to the fall garden, they have a space, they haven't touched it for a while, or it's filled with dead tomatoes or whatever. What do they do?
Well, luckily September, October is a pretty open window, even into November if you're really, really late. You know, the brassica group of plants, which is broccoli, cauliflower, kale, collard greens, cabbage, you can start all that stuff safely from transplant, and you know, it's going to do fine all winter long and into spring.
Sure. Well, those are just some of the different things that you can use. And what you're doing right now in terms of business is with Resolution Gardens is really helping people who, there are lots of busy families out there. Lots of people want to have some of that bounty that we just saw on their tables, but their lives are so hectic they can't really do that. So you're helping them by putting in raised beds and teaching them how to container garden, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, our motto is grow food, will help any way you want to do it. You know, we've put gardens up on the balconies of the condo buildings. We've helped people with little tiny container projects, and then we've helped people who wanted to tear up their whole entire front yard and be a part of our farm project to do those sorts of things. And, you know, it's like you said, we started the idea 3.5 years ago. You know, we wanted to be a part of the movement too, so we were getting involved in gardening, and we were building things and realized, you know, people are just not going to have time to do all this, or maybe they don't have a pickup truck, or maybe they don't have the power tools to do the basic carpentry stuff. So we were like, well, let's just try to build a platform that we can help with whatever people need. Is it the planning? Is it digging out coastal Bermuda grass? Is it, you know, building a little raised bed box?
Right. Well, it sounds like a great model, and again, this is a great time of year for people to consider getting started or renewing. And as I kind of got sidetracked there for a second. I wanted to make sure we mention Resolution Gardens, but we're talking about the things that people can use right now, and whether it's in the container or in raised bed settings, there's plenty of stuff to plant. You mentioned the brassica, so let's talk about some of the other kinds of things that are out there. Maybe a little late for some things, like tomatoes and chilies, right?
It is. You know, that stuff, it's funny because you can be starting a fall crop of tomatoes right in the middle of the heat of the summer and thinking that you're crazy, but those plants kind of do a reverse growth with the temperatures dropping, and when it comes into October, then those plants will set some fruit.
I always think of the lettuces and the leaf crops.
Absolutely. And you know, even September is sometimes a little too hot to start spinach. You know, we went through a season where we seeded spinach seeds every week, 3 weeks in a row, and didn't get any germination. And we went up to Gabriel Valley Nursery to pick up some other plants, and we were telling them about this trouble we were having. And they said, well, it's still too hot. Those seeds cannot germinate if it's that hot. And, you know, we're all new to this too. We were like, what? And they said, they have to put the flats of spinach into the refrigerator to get them to germinate so that they can have spinach starts for the nurseries.
Interesting.
So, you know, waiting until October and even the end of October for spinach is going to be fine. So,
you know, we're trying to sell people on this notion of the fall crop and the winter crop really too. And then we talk about lettuces and spinach, that something can harvest all winter long. What do, if they, again, getting back around to the idea they have this blank slates, or they have maybe rows in their garden that need to be renewed, what do you use in your soil blends?
Well, I know you said you wanted to get beyond compost, but I have to just say, use compost.
Yeah, right.
But then on top of compost, which, you know, you should be trying to make yourself, because we've all got, you know, waste that we don't want to be putting in the landfill. So
Sure.
We use the, you know, the sort of pelletized fertilizers, the 824, the 464, whichever blend. It's good, you know, without overdoing it, to be refreshing your trace minerals with some green sand or copperas, or they have Minerals Plus. It's like a mix of some of those
you use
trace
it all
minerals.
the time. It's good stuff. Even just granite sand can be, it's readily available and a great way to provide minerals and drainage for people who, especially if you have clay, it's a good amendment that way.
Sure.
So freshen things up, you know, go ahead and plant in succession, right, in the fall. That's really important.
Yeah, I mean, because we try not to make things complicated for people, you know, we tell people it's fun to try to start things from seed. And then if you're not having good results, you can always fall back on, you know, running to the nursery and getting some starts. You know, you could start some seeds in trays, you know, in the windowsill or whatever, and try to direct seed some stuff, because it's cheaper and it's more fun, you know, to plant seeds and kind of nurse them along.
I think that's when people always ask me, you know, is it better to have seeds or transplants? And I kind of will respond based on kind of their personality type.
Right.
If they just want something quick and easy, I say get a transplant.
Exactly.
But if they're the nurturing type that really are into it, seeds are the way to go. You know?
And then, you know, root crops is also fall.
You're right.
So carrots and beets and turnips and kohlrabis are all things that you generally start from seed anyway. I have started to see beet starts at the nurseries, which kind of surprised me. But
it's cool.
Again, it's great because some people, because, you know, we're all getting back into this as a culture, it helps to have the plant there when you start your garden, and, you know, you can see it and you know you're taking care of it.
Okay, real briefly, your favorite things to grow in containers?
So containers, herbs, you know, and I brought a few herbs.
Right, some catnip and then others.
And lettuces are probably the sort of typical grow lettuce in containers. Spinach. Kale does pretty well in container.
Yeah, and
for the fall.
And they're beautiful in containers too. The kales, the lettuces, things like that make beautiful container gardens.
Fall is green season.
Got to wrap it up, Randy. But thank you so much for coming on Central Texas Gardener. It's Randy Jewart from Resolution Gardens. Thanks so much again for being our guest.
Thanks for having me, and go Scarecrow, Fall Garden.
All right, coming up next is our friend Daphne.
Hi, I'm Daphne Richards, and this is Augie Doggy. We've been getting a lot of questions about pecan trees and crape myrtles that seem to be raining a sticky substance. Many of our viewers have reported sticky lawns, sidewalks, and cars and are worried about their trees and shrubs. Well, although I can completely understand why you would be concerned, this rain is actually just a sugary substance, referred to as honeydew, that's caused by insects feeding on the leaves and other tender parts of plants. On pecan trees, aphids are most likely to blame. And on crape myrtles, I've noticed that whiteflies are more commonly the culprits right now. These insects feed by injecting their proboscis into the phloem and feeding on the plant's sap, which is pretty much pure sugar. So when these insects excrete their waste products, that waste is also almost pure sugar. Sooty mold, a secondary pest, then moves in to take advantage of the situation. This fungus feeds on the excreted sugar, so you'll probably also notice a black substance on your plant's leaves. Sooty mold is actually a bigger issue than the honeydew because it interferes with the plant's ability to soak up sunlight. We thank Felicia for these pictures of her blotchy pecan tree leaves. Bill Ree, an extension specialist that focuses on insect issues in pecans, told us this: managing the honeydew from aphids is a real challenge. On many occasions for the homeowner, I've recommended just a good hard spray of water to remove aphids and honeydew. Bill notes that the ones on Felicia's tree are the black-margined pecan aphid. They go through cycles, building up during June and July, then we'll get another smaller invasion in August and September. But really, even getting all of the insects off with water is impossible on mature trees and shrubs. Unless they're very young, pecan trees are too tall to reach all of the insects. And crepe myrtles have small leaves and lots of nooks and crannies, so you simply can't wash all of the insects off. Your best option really is to do nothing and simply let nature take its course. Ladybugs and green lacewings may take care of the problem by eating the aphids. And parasitic wasps will lay their eggs on the aphids to raise their young. But even if there are not enough beneficial insects around to control the damaging ones, pecans and crepe myrtles are deciduous, so they're going to drop those infested leaves this fall and produce new leaves in the spring. And hopefully next year, we won't have as bad of an infestation. You can also help plants through the stress by watering them slowly and deeply, so that they may be able to produce a few more leaves and put on some new growth this season before they go dormant. If you're planting a pecan tree for the first time, consider a variety that has a tolerance to aphid, such as Pawnee, Kanza, Lakota, and Sioux. Our plant of the week is butterfly or orchid vine, Mascagnia macroptera. It thrives in the heat and sun, but also does well in part shade. It prefers well-drained soil and is very drought tolerant. It may go dormant in cold winters, but will return in spring. It can be a bit invasive, but that depends on your point of view. It attracts bees and other beneficials, but is deer resistant. The seed pods resemble butterflies and can be dried for crafts and decorations. Here are a beautiful few designs crafted by young Nina Matz and her friend Tyler. They even included poppy seed heads. Thanks to Mom Maria Matz for sharing. Another pick of the week comes from Jason, who shares this great picture of the black Spanish grapes he's growing to turn into wine. To do this week, it's time to divide spring flowering bulbs. We'd love to hear from you, so please visit klru.org/ctg to send us your questions and plants of the week from your garden.
Thanks, Daphne. Now let's check in John Dromgoole for Backyard Basics.
Hello gardening friends, welcome to Backyard Basics. You want to save some money out in your garden? Start your own seeds. You want to get the varieties that you like? Start your own seeds. It's real easy. You can buy some equipment or you can make your own. Let me show you a few of these ideas that we have right here. One of them is a seed starting tray. You're going to find these at garden centers. They have this nice little cover over them to keep the humidity in. And so starting seeds in something like that is really neat. It's like a miniature greenhouse. And I think really one of the preferred ways of doing this. Another one that is very popular with folks are these little peat pellets. And these peat pellets can be purchased in a tray like this. And then what you do is you moisten them and they swell up. You can see the little one on the side in the dry state. And then you can see the one that swells up. Well, right in the top of that, you can drop your seed. Then you put it back in the tray and really you're on your way. And then you'll plant that whole thing. Take that little netting off of there and plant the whole thing and you're on your way. Plants really like it that way because it's less disturbing of the roots. And really that's a key. These other ones you have to dig out with a tablespoon, but that's okay. Usually they're pretty hardy. Another thing that folks like to use, and I like to suggest it, since styrofoam can't be recycled and it takes hundreds, maybe thousands of years to break down, we may as well use them again. And one of the ways of doing that is to use these styrofoam egg cartons. I've used them for many years. One of the things I like about them is that you can use them again and again. And so we start our seeds in this, we make some little holes in the bottom so that we have some really good drainage, and then fill it with a good potting mix. And works extremely well. You can see right there on the top, you put the variety that you're planting, and then put the information in your garden book, your garden diary, and that'll help you next year to know whether you started too early, you didn't like that crop. Pieces of information like that are one of the gardener's best gardening tools. A community pot. A community pot is a way to put many seeds in one spot, and then you prick them out with a sharp popsicle stick. There's special tools for doing that, but this is another way of doing it, and it works very, very well. You know, some other of the considerations are the type of water that you use. the best thing would be rainwater. That's the gold standard. So collect a little rainwater. That's why people have those barrels out there, because they use them in the garden. And rainwater is the very, very best thing that you can do. And so if you want, you just mist it onto the containers. That's how I water them. It's very gentle. It doesn't knock the seedling over. And you can come out periodically, do that. One of the things that I would like to encourage you to do is consider seaweed, because it really does help stimulate root growth on a new seedling. It's really one of the best things that you can do. And so get a stronger root system, a more vigorous plant, less stress, and that's the way to do that. So a little seaweed mixed in your water, it's a very nice thing to do. Use a high quality mix also for your seed germinator. A lot of folks will use a light indoors, and I encourage you to do that. Putting these things in a window really doesn't give you a very vigorous seed. So some folks use a fluorescent light fixture right over the growing area, a few inches away from the seedlings, and you get good, strong seeds at the very beginning. So these are some ideas to consider as you begin to start your own seeds at home, saving a lot of money and getting the varieties that you like. For Backyard Basics, I'm John Dromgoole. I'll see you next time.
Visit klru.org/CTG to find out more. Next week, see how to grow olive trees. Until then, I'll see you in the garden.
To learn about today's program, watch online and follow CTG's blog, check out klru.org/CTG.
Support for Central Texas Gardener comes from GeoGrowers, offering custom soil blends for lawns, gardens, xeriscaping, and organic landscaping supplies. More information at geogrowers.net.